Okay. So, hi, I'm Nancy, and my talk, hi, that's enthusiasm. It's one random insecure web application, please. I had a really serious title that also had the same initials, but nobody liked it except one person, so we went with the funny one. So, I actually did this talk like 2 weeks ago at NOLACon. Probably no one was there. Okay, one person was there, my husband. Yeah, but here are the differences, because this is an active project. I'm still changing regularly, so I made some changes. The main one was something that I'd sort of overlooked because I wasn't doing it, is I actually added the user interface to make it easy for everyone else to use. So yay. Because I was just like, yeah, nothing wrong with sending REST requests through Postman, is there? Oh, well, maybe. Maybe some people like a UI. So I added some more data to it, and I did a few minor tweaks. So those are the main differences between the two talks. So some background on why I did this. Well, I teach secure coding. And it started off being once a year for a week. And it expanded. So started with one small group of Java developers, and so it was easy. There weren't that many insecure Java apps, so I made one, and then we looked at why it was insecure and fixed it. Fun. But then they added some more developers, and we ended up adding the new Java developers who did microservices in Node.js, the DevOps people, the data science people, the old AS400 programmers. I mean, the AS400 is old, not the programmers. But yes, so they added all these people with all these different backgrounds. And at first I was told to just like throw them in the room, and that just didn't work, same old thing. So you needed to sort of change what you were teaching for your audience a bit. And even if I could use the same application to some extent, I still wanted to show different things. And you couldn't always use the same application. So I needed some new applications. And I started changing some of the existing ones back and forth for an example here or an example there for people. And just seemed to make sense at that point when I realized I was making the exact same code change that I did previously, backward and forth, to start putting in some config and Boolean flags, etc. And so that's how this whole thing started, with some Boolean flags to turn things on and off. But then people get bored at seeing the same app over and over again. The first one was overpoweringly cute cats, which was for sharing cute cat pictures. So yes, and you also had your private cute cat picture, which no one else could see. Well, it was an insecure app, so they probably could, but so they were. People might get bored of looking at pictures of my cats, which are what I use to stalk it all the time. So I figured we needed to start customizing the theme and doing some different things. And so I worked on a way to do that abstractly so that I didn't have to rewrite apps. If I had a couple base apps, I could sort of change out the theme on all of them without that, like including the content. So I could change out everything. And then I was just going, why can't I just randomly use my base app and randomly select data and options? And the biggest reason most people would say no to that one is probably because it's really hard to correlate all that. So you have a topic, you have to generate a topic for it. And then you have to generate data that goes along with that. It's not just usernames and passwords and easy data. So that's why most people probably wouldn't do that. It's pretty easy to turn Boolean flags on and off randomly. That's easy. But because of my background, it actually sounded fun and interesting. See, originally, before I ever got into security, when I was like 18 or 19 and starting college, my love was natural language understanding. Yes, I think it was from reading Asimov, probably, and all the robots. Yes. It put me in that direction. So like in college, that was what I wanted to focus on, was AI and natural language. In fact, my senior project was, I don't know if they still do it, I made an entry for the Loebner Prize contest. I don't know if they still do that. It was an instantiation of the Turing test. You know, where in 1955, his paper, Computing Machinery Intelligence, he said, can machines think? And he said that if you couldn't distinguish them from a human, you could say they did. And the Loebner Prize ran every year for a $10,000 prize where you entered computer entries and they'd have people talk to people and they'd judge them. So that was my senior project, was to do something like that. And then, like in grad school, I worked for a couple linguists too, so that was fun. They were working in ancient languages, so they wanted to generate verb morphologies of ancient languages like Sanskrit and Biblical Hebrew, which you could see how useful that would be to this project. But it was interesting. It shows you something about how language works. And it was the weirdest code ever because they wrote a language to define the language, and then there was a Perl parser which would generate Prolog code which would create the verb morphologies. So strangest project ever. And it was a grad school research assistantship, so $15,000 a year for doing it. So that's how that works. But as you see, I used to love this. So it looked like an opportunity to do some language stuff and mix it in with security. And yeah. And how I got into security is completely random other story, which we won't go into. But okay, before we get into a demo, a bit about the design for the random generation. I did it in Node.js. Why did I do it in Node.js? It's because I'd never really done a big project in Node.js, and I wanted the experience, so why not? The corollary to doing it in Node.js, which is not a compiled language, is occasionally, although it hasn't happened for weeks, with all the random generation, I'll hit a path that I didn't know had an error, because it never ran it and it doesn't have to compile it, and so we could just have a random error in our demo. It probably won't happen. As I said, it hasn't happened for several weeks. And it's still, the process is a little bit manual still. There's steps, but those steps could easily be automated. I just spent my time doing all the fun stuff, and I kept working on the fun stuff till I was like, okay, you really need to do the part that makes it easy for the users now. And yes, that got delayed. And but yes, it'll be automated a little better in the future. It's not too many steps, actually. It's more of a get base app, generate files, copy them there, compile, deploy, sort of thing. So demo. All right. And if the demo fails, I have 4 randomly generated apps all running. So we have something to look at if it fails. So, all right. Should be running. So I'll just hit. I don't do fancy user interfaces. I used to work as a programmer, and I was told that anything I did that was UI was ugly, and so I stopped trying. I know, I remember once spending a lot of time on the CSS. I thought it was really pretty, and everything looked good, and like, well, don't you think that's a little ugly? One of the business people is just like, maybe you should have specified better what you wanted then. But so now this is what I do, unless told otherwise. Perfectly functional. All right. So it immediately, when I did that, I can probably make this bigger. Although some of these are going to be big, but yes. But yes, it immediately decided we should do hilarious myths as our topic. So, and it just, so this is the way I can generate it and make changes if I want to. You can, there's another way you can just have it generate all the files at once and you don't have to look at them and go through. Some of the things tie into each other. So the first thing is the topic. So if we did want to modify the topic, we'd just click in modify, and you'll note when it starts that it says, yes, changing the main topic may have unexpected results like crashing, null, and nonsense coming up in the app. So, because the main topic, obviously, if it doesn't know anything about the topic, if I changed it to something, Fnords, whatever, it would not know how to generate the related content. So, there's maybe a dozen main topics I've given it things. So, As you see, there's a main topic, a secondary topic, and a modifier. But you can just continue through. Some of it, yes, probably could be included. So then we have some founder details. That all of these will have a founder. Perhaps one should, let's see, we can modify something here. So you see it's generating random data about the person. Maybe we'll make that 13. All right. None of that was read, so we can continue on. We'll get to, let's see. Okay, so these are just some more random site things, the expiration. Okay, so these are some of the Boolean security options here, and I think it puts them all on one page, which you want to modify them. But let's look at this. So here, client-side, cross-site scripting, I'll set that to true, and let's just set that to wrong, which obviously I'm just showing that I actually do a tiny bit of data validation there. So that you can't quite break, this is one of the few things of JavaScript, Java it actually generating on that one. So yes, it didn't allow me to put wrong for my Boolean. So it just kept it to true. So, but these are mostly all the Boolean options. So we will continue on. And these are a lot of the basic messages which do not have to do with the topic altogether. One could, of course, you go into all of these and modify them. The site look, as you see, that looks like SQL. This one, you see you have several things that are red, and a lot of that times that just means it's based on something that was already, like the URL being Hilarious Myths 1 is based on the fact that our topic was Hilarious Myths. What's a good font color? I don't like medium orchid. Magenta. Those can change a few things. So it's using Bootstrap, and this is where you can change the columns if you felt like it or things like that. So until you've actually seen them, this may not make as much sense. But yes. This is more stuff about the founder. Very interesting. That'll make a good about us statement. Okay. So I think we'll just go through the rest of these. These are our users. You can modify each one individually. It made 7 of them. Ooh. Admin123, whose secret is that they cheated on their significant other. Wow. I sometimes am surprised by what it says. Did I just break it? I did. I'm sorry. I either closed it or I did something that broke it. I'm not sure which. But oh, I know exactly what happened, which I hate to say, but here. It looked like the whole thing failed. It's no longer running. You run. If it's not running now, it's because I made some code changes a little while ago, and I hadn't tested them yet because I didn't want to do it right before the talk, which is hilariously funny. But oh well, I know what happens. I never set the location to write the files, so when it started having to try to write files on the post, it died. I know exactly why that happened. It was my fault. Let's look at some of the ones I've already generated. This happened. This is why I should not have modified the code, even if I was leaving up the current running version in the hotel room a couple hours ago. But here's yes, one I did earlier. Over-the-top monsters from Doctor Who, which got generated. Let's see. Also, here's another good one. Zoo babies for soothing stress relief in the best bootstrap ever invented, I think. The Twitter's best invention. I love this one. So, let's see. There's another one over here that looks a little different. So, they have different looks, as you can obviously see. I don't know if I've created an account on any of these, but probably haven't. But yeah. But who knows what's going to happen. But yes, as you see, they just have they're sort of basic. So, and I'm using Chrome, so obviously I can't show any. Even if there was reflected cross-site scripting, we would never see it. I always note. But yeah, so here's like, yes, where it did generate some stuff like, hello and welcome to Temple Cats for Light and Peace. Let's commence this blog with the Temple Cats at Karnak. So, something simple. The About Us page. If you look, some of the URLs even get generated differently. In 2001, Hazel Potter founded Temple Cats for Light and Peace. Hazel suffered from depression, started the site to help others through a common interest in cats. Hazel's depression was bad. At the age of 11, she couldn't get out of bed, and finally she discovered Light and Peace through Temple Cats and studying archaeology. That seems a little random, but it does generate things a little randomly. So, and as Emerson said, something about foolish inconsistencies in small minds. So, we'll go with that. So yes. So you get something like this, and there's going to be a ton of things that are insecure about it. So even if we don't necessarily go and see them. But if we wanted to see if we could do something, I wonder. Oh, there's some comments. Benjamin 18 said, I like it. Benjamin 18 said, fantastic. Let's see. Yes. So, this one says that I'm not allowed to add a comment with a script in it. That's too bad. Oh well. You see, there's a vote for our favorite Temple Cat update. There's normal basic web things in here. So, that's the idea. We're not going to go through and test one of them. Some of them, okay, so there's some slightly, so I guess it depends what you mean by the same functionality. Obviously, the security things are completely different. Some of them might do forgot password through a side channel. Some of them might not. Some of them might use a JWT token with things. Some of them don't. I mean, some of them might have your user name in a cookie that it actually uses. Some of them don't. I mean, so it's just, there's a lot of different features, especially with regards to the security stuff. As far as a lot of the basic stuff, I mean, they all have some of the same basic stuff. There's a little randomness on certain pages, like that. So some pages may show up or not, but it's a lot of the same basic stuff. Obviously, login, registration, forgot password are always there. I did throw in an About Us page on all of them because I like that. I thought it was funny. But yeah, depending on the type of website, which when I talk about how it's designed, that they have 3 types they'll actually fall under. There's some pages that may or may not show up. But yes. And how they display with their verbiages and all that is different. So, but yes, there is a bit of standardness to them, but not completely what? Yes? Well, yeah, obviously. So, you can obviously turn options on or off on purpose or just get something random. Did someone over there? No. Okay. But anyway, let's go back to the slides and we will just go through what the options are, the oddities. If we'd actually done the whole thing, let's see. Oh, current slide. So, sorry about that. I really thought I was safe to change the code as long as I left the other one running. I'm one of those people who can't leave my code alone. It worked last time I changed it right before a demo. Yes. So the basic steps to use it are, obviously there's a base application, you can generate some files, and then you can copy the files, and so these are the files you have to copy and where they go to, so it's the simple steps then. I'm just doing, since this one is a Java application, Maven clean package and deploying to Tomcat. So it's not really that many files even to copy and paste. So in 5 different directories, and that part will be automated. I'm not sure exactly when. I'm going to have actual work time where I can spend on this in August, so certainly by then. But options and oddities here. So the first thing I'm going to point out is it's much more likely to be very insecure than to actually generate a site that's secure. And that's, let's use CSRF protection as an example. I have 3 Boolean options on that. One that turns it on and off just in general. One that chooses whether or not you have a good random or a bad random for your token. And then one that chooses whether or not you do a normal synchronizer token, or do you use a implementation that is a variant on the double submit cookies, but it's a variant on it that is done incorrectly. So that means you have 7 insecure possibilities and 1 secure possibility. And everything else is like that too. So it's likely to be extremely insecure. So what are some of the security options in general? And let's see. Well, there's SQL injection, which, to be honest, I get annoyed by SQL injection, but you always have to teach it when you teach secure coding, because it's still there for some reason. But so there are exactly 4 spots in here you can turn SQL injection on, 4 very specific spots. So that's what each of those is. There's cross-site scripting, both stored, reflected, and DOM. And I did sort of have to force the DOM one. I admit it felt forced. If you look at the code, I'm actually using OWASP's HTML encoders library on that same page to stop there from being a stored cross-site scripting. Which is why I guess it felt forced. It's like, okay. There's some user enumeration. There's CSRF. We have, from forgot password, there are 8 options for a variety of incorrect things going wrong. There's a fake side channel option where obviously it's not going to actually send you an email, because who wants this thing sending mail? No one. So it will give you a little message like in the modal saying this is your mail, and it'll show you what the mail and the link would be. So it's like it's a pretend email, which I thought was a good way to get around that. So there's some registration problems. There's some file uploads. Failure to restrict URL access. There's some encryption and hashing stuff. Things I mean to add. In fact, one of these is prototyped, and actually I was smart and didn't add this one in right before. Is the services. I have on one type of app, a thing that will add in a service page that calls some services. So that is with some cores and that sort of problem. Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to, assuming you get have the right settings. I've done it. Because that's always a good one if you're teaching and people, I don't know, people sometimes don't, that's sort of one of those things that can really show people how bad something is if you're teaching developers who don't think about security. Because they're like, why are you really putting all these restrictions on our file uploads? This is why. So yeah, I actually have that in prototype, some services that can be added in with some REST and CORS issues, which that should be fun. And, an embedded NoSQL database, some of that was another thing I was working on. And I think that'll be fun. And I have several other things I'd love to put in. They're in my brain, but I'm not actively working on them. Including a great idea somebody gave me about having an option for it to actually create flags so that you could set maybe 10 and you could then go through and find flags, which would be fun for training, I think. So that's where I am in terms of what I'm doing. So there's some things that don't work together, and you could randomly, I may not have found them all. So one example happened in forgot password where it was just too ridiculous. Was obviously there's the option of doing a side channel or not a side channel. And if you have and so if you get the no side channel, you could also get the you don't ask any questions when you go back to it at one point. So it's just like you can enter any username and reset the password. I was just like, that's too ridiculous. I have to stop that. That option should never show up because it's not even something you think. I don't believe anyone would do that. We'll go with. I hope not. So like some of those I then had to make certain things exclusive to each other, and some of those may come up, and if so, then they'll have to be fixed somewhere, so that they don't happen if they're ridiculous in what happens. People really do that?
Well, not intended. If you're like right, easier to cook in the trust password user.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I know that I'm trying to teach sometimes people who don't. Yeah, I teach people who a lot of times have no security background at all, and so a lot of times you do want some pretty simple examples, but you don't want them. Yeah, some things just seem a little too silly. So, all right. So very quickly, the look and feel options. This is like 1 minute. So as I said, it was the easiest thing in the world because with Bootstrap themes, that immediately changes how some of the stuff looked. And then you just did, I have 12 of them set up to choose between. Obviously, you could add more if you wanted to. But yeah, they're in a directory called Bootstrap or something in there, and it knows to choose one of those files. So, things like font colors, I gave it a list of colors that I thought would look always good on dark or white backgrounds, because that's what most things were, either black or white. So I didn't want it to choose something where you could not read it. So I did a little intelligence there, but mostly these are all things where I can just choose anything and they all work together. Things like font size, the glyphicons I used for the pictures, the Bootstrap column layouts for the forms and labels and the menus. The only thing I think I did that was any sort of computation was, I think, on the Bootstrap column layout, because, it has to add up to you have 12 columns, was just a little math so that the label and the form size length weren't more than 12. So that was it. Everything else was just pretty easy. Choose from lists, etc. So, the data, this is where it gets more interesting in terms of how you get it to hold together. There was, of course, some simple data and some complex data. The simple data, obviously, is what we're going to talk about first because it's easier to talk about. So some of the examples of the simple data are like usernames, passwords, obviously pretty easy to generate. Like if they have a favorite something or a secret, although secrets can get a little more complicated. Some things like, do we want to have an extra admin? What URL names should I use? Some of the simple error message verbiage. Some of the cookie names, things like that. So those are what I considered simple data. And there were a couple different techniques. I'll just take passwords as a quick one. I mean, obviously there are password lists out there. I started with one of those. One of the smaller Rocky lists, I think, was my initial base list. And then I added a few strong passwords to it. And then there's a random chance that the user does something to it, like capitalizes the letter, adds punctuation, etc. So, some things like that. Usernames, there is, depends on the site topic, whether it knows anything about the topic. If it has data about it, it might choose usernames related to the topic. So in the one where I generated over-the-top monsters from Doctor Who, you might end up with a user like, I love Daleks, because they know that Daleks are a monster from Doctor Who. So it uses some of the data in generating that, and people do usernames like that. It also just uses names for usernames, like people's names, John, Alicia, and adds numbers, which is what a lot of people do on these things. When it asks you for your favorite of something, if it knows, generally that's choosing from a list. And if it comes down to a secret, actually that should it goes a little more of the complex. I'll discuss in a bit. So, I mean, a lot of these things are things where it doesn't really matter. They don't correlate. Or, what I mean, they don't. So, like, there are a lot of, if you look at the code, you can see when something is using other data because the order matters. You know, like certain things require the topic to be generated. So these things are mostly things that do not require knowing anything else to generate. So they're easy. Then you go to some of the more complex data, which might be, well, just to start with the topic. As I said, I wanted the topics to not always come up with the exact same thing every time, which is sort of funny because I didn't want it every one to be about cats or monsters or whatnot. So I wanted them to be at least a little different. And so my way of doing it we saw they had a base topic, which is supposed to be a general topic, and that's going to be your monsters, your cats, your habit helper, your whatever the basic thing you're trying to do is. And then you had a secondary topic which could modify that. So if you were going to do a site about monsters, that's the secondary topic might be from Doctor Who. So that narrows down from all monsters to specifically monsters from Doctor Who. And then your modifier is pretty much, it doesn't narrow the topic in any way, but it might add something to it. Amazing monsters from Doctor Who. Something like that. So it just is a way of doing that. And there are different types of topics. And when people have posts or pictures, now that actually is sort of a complex thing, because not only are we talking about, you have to choose, if you're talking about something like where somebody's uploading a picture, you have to choose a picture that is that topic, write something about that is relates to that, that makes sense in English. I mean, obviously perfect grammar, you don't need it, but it actually starts getting a little complicated in terms of all of that. So, in terms of how it's written, I originally came up with all sorts of really cool ideas of how I could use a semantic representation and translate through a grammar and apply this, and there's like, no, that's way too tough. I'm not doing any of that. Let's try to find a simpler way. So the simpler way is, who remembers Mad Libs? Yes. I have some right here, in case anyone doesn't aware. So, yes, you ask for like a color, a number, an adjective, whatnot, and you select those and you fill them in, and you've got something. That's a bit how we did it. It's not exactly it's not always random, and some of the things I'm filling in are not just a noun. It might be like description of picture or the base topic or something like that, singular topic. There definitely is adjective, verb, etc. Filled in as well. And if anyone wants any Mad Libs, feel free to come and grab some. That'd be fun at the party. So, but yeah, so that was sort of like, yeah, see, I could do something really complex, or I could do something easy, and I went with easy, because, well, the whole purpose of this was to come up with something that sort of hung together, not something that was this awesome language project. Right, so that's what I did with the posts. Obviously, when you think about the way you have all these different images and things like that are being combined together, and so you might have topic. You could just have monsters, or if you could have monsters from Doctor Who, or monsters from Greek mythology, whatever. And but all of those would combine under the general monster heading. So you need some way to organize this and actually store your images in a nice way. So that was actually one of the complex ways I thought was that organization, which no one actually has to understand to use this unless you want to add more data. So you don't even, so that part doesn't actually matter unless you want to add to it. But I ended up using a sort of complex scheme involving symbolic links to all the images in different directories so that I wouldn't have to have them multiple places. You could have done something with tagging. I thought about doing bitwise operations in a database, and I was like, no, everyone hates bitwise operations. They get mad whenever you use them unless they're one of those people who likes them. Everyone hates them. So I didn't do it. Maybe not everyone. I'm sure there's someone here who likes bitwise operations. Okay, he likes bitwise operations. So, but I didn't do them because I thought that would just confuse people if they wanted to add anything, because then they'd have to figure out the right combinations. So comments were done very similarly to the post in a Mad Lib sort of style. And when I said like the secrets and things like that, those also are a bit Mad Lib-ish when I said those were a bit more complex. So one of the things that I thought was fun, and where the About Us page for about the founder, that is a little bit Mad Lib-ish, but there's some other stuff going on too. So, and that's like my favorite page for whatever reason. So I don't know why. But yes, so the way that worked is there are actually, I guess, 3 styles of web pages that come out of here right now. One of them is when it's actually meant to be a self-help type web page to help you deal with your anxiety via such and such. And if it comes up with a self-help web page, never use it to actually help you with that problem, please. So, yes, it's not meant to do that. It comes up with self-help web pages. It comes up with ones where somebody has done it because of some cause, to stop the poachers of the white rhino in Africa. I'm sharing all this information with you because of that. That sort of thing. Or the third one, it's just my hobby. I like this. I'm sharing it with you. So there are 3 main flavors, and those come out in the About Us page, where it decides that. Based on the topic, it decides whether or not you can actually be self-help or not. Only certain topics will fit the whole self-help type style. And the same with the other, like, it's for a cause. Although once I got starving robots, which I thought was hilarious. That was the cause, it was because of the starving robots in Britain. I did not take that code out because I thought it was too funny. I could have stopped it, but I was like, no, we like that. So, I mean, you have the cause ones and that. So they can generate in a similar sort of way. So, okay. So that was, I have a lot of fun with those. And there are 81 different types of data being loaded, not counting any images or CSS files, just 81 different types of data going in there, created at present. So it's a lot of data. And so that's why it's sort of fun. I enjoy it. I have plans for some improvements. The biggest one, more data will make it, everything comes out better as soon as you add more data, and adding some more automation. And as I said, I wanted to add some more, I had some large sort of security areas I was working on, like the services and cores I mentioned, and the NoSQL were all things. So I had those, and then there's just some problems that come up now and then I'm tweaking. So you can contact, I'm on Twitter at Nancy Snoke. So the base app here, and I'd love to put out 3 base apps and with 3 different generators for different languages, but I haven't gotten there yet. the base app is like, yeah, well, the base app is, so basically has all the basic code that's consistent between all this, and then there's these other files that get generated, and you put those in. In fact, I think the base app actually would be a working insecure application of some sort. I don't know what the topic is. Yeah. Yeah. I think you could probably easily launch the same sort of thing on Jetty or things like that without really any major changes. But yes, obviously that would be good. I'm using embedded databases because, well, that way you don't have to ask someone when to set up a database in your app. So, and that way also, if you break stuff when you're doing your test, like if you're with students and they decide to break everything, you can just restart it and then everything's back up. So, but yeah, and then so the base app is the basic app, and then, the other spot is where I have the random, generation code, which, actually I'm going to be making some changes and uploading to, soon. So, as I said, this is all a gigantic work in progress, that I'm still working on because I'm a perfectionist and, and there's so many features to add. Plus, there's a 2-year-old in our house, so that takes care of too much time. But anyway, is there any questions anyone has or anything? Would anyone like Mad Libs?